I have a show called Uncovered on Wednesdays that I do with Ron Filipkowski. We uncover the far-right propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream media. And they still don't get it. You know, I was watching Liz Cheney. There's a viral video going around of Liz Cheney on NBC, I think. And the interviewer is going, you know, so are you seriously saying that if Donald Trump wins, that, you know, we could lose our democracy? Like, this is a question you should have been asking 7 years ago. Like, why is it taking them so long? And she's like, yes, this is what I'm trying to tell you. Why are people in this country, Mark, just so chill about this?
No, it's true.
You know?
I actually thank you, because I saw on your Twitter feed, and I think I may have retweeted it, that very same thing. Tony, I think I sent it to you, right? The piece from the Today Show. This is really true what Anthony's saying, this notion somehow that these interviewers seem so perplexed and overwhelmed by the notion that Donald Trump would not, you know, dude, he already did it. I mean, he already tried to cling to power and overturn the democracy. You don't think he would try part deux? Go ahead, play a little bit of it, please, Tony.
An American, including here in the United States. So it's a very dangerous moment, and it's a moment for people to understand that cannot be the path that we go down as a country.
Just yesterday in an interview, you said fundamentally there's a choice to be made. You can't be both for Donald Trump and for the Constitution. You have to choose.
Yeah.
A vote for Donald Trump is unconstitutional, anti-American.
Well, he won't support and uphold the Constitution. We've already seen what happened. He is the only president in American history who attempted to overturn an election, who attempted to seize power, to stay in power after he had lost. And the reason that we didn't have a much more serious crisis was because there were people around him who stopped him, because there were people around the country, state officials, for example, who stopped him, who did not yield to the pressure that he put on them to change votes from Biden to Trump. We won't have that safeguard again. And he's so dangerous. If you have a president who is unwilling to abide by the rulings of the courts, who's unwilling to uphold the Constitution, then there are no guardrails who can stop him.
You've said we're sort of sleepwalking into dictatorship in the United States. Dictatorship. Is that what we would have if we reelect Donald Trump?
I think it's a very, very real threat and concern. And I don't say any of that lightly. And frankly, it's painful for me as someone who, you know, has spent her whole life in Republican politics, who grew up as a Republican, to watch what's happening to my party and to watch the extent to which Donald Trump himself has, you know, basically determined that the only thing that matters is him, his power, his success. And that is not somebody you can entrust with the power of the presidency.
It seems crazy to ask this and even crazier to fathom it. But do you believe if Donald Trump were elected next year that he would try to stay in office beyond a second term? That he would never leave office?
There's no question.
You think he would try to stay in power forever?
Absolutely.
And she asks it sort of incredulously. It's funny.
If you look
Where
at
has
what
she
he
been?
did in the
sleeping under a rock
in terms of his pressure on the vice president not to count.
You really think he would do something like that? Guy, exactly. My God.
It's
all right.
so frustrating because, like, you know,
Thank you, Tony.
We talk about the media elite, and, you know, there is an argument to say that a lot of the people who work in the media who are white and wealthy, and, you know, they live in New York because a lot of these studios are in New York. And how do you afford to live in New York? Even if you're a young journalist and it's your first job, you're still having to use your dad's money to pay for the apartment that you're renting. So this is the media elite. It is people who like the status quo as it is. They want to be able to keep hold of their jobs. And so they just kind of, they don't want things to change, and they don't seem to understand that democracy is more important than their own white privilege. And I do get very concerned about this because the media is not doing its job right now. It is there for a reason, to hold government to account, to hold people in public office to account. It's not doing it. I mean, look, politicians never even get interviewed on the media. You know, it's like it's part of the democracy is the media interviewing and questioning politicians. It barely happens. You know, the Republicans will go on Fox or right-wing channels and get softball questions. And the Democrats, they don't need to get interviewed necessarily because nobody seems to have much of a problem with what they're doing. And that is wrong as well. So, yeah, we are sleepwalking into a dictatorship.
There is a piece, and I wanted to get your take from the Washington Post. It's a lengthy piece A Trump dictatorship is increasingly inevitable. We should stop pretending. And the piece begins with, let's stop the wishful thinking and face the stark reality. There's a clear path to dictatorship in the United States. It's getting shorter every day.
Yeah.
In 13 weeks, Donald Trump will have locked up the Republican nomination. The poll averages to real politics, of course, you know this, 47 points ahead of his nearest competitor, Trump, right? And it goes on for many months now. We've been living in a world of self-delusion, rich with imagined possibilities. Maybe it'll be Ron DeSantis, maybe Nikki Haley, maybe the myriad indictments of Trump will doom him with Republican suburbanites. Such hopeful speculation has allowed us to drift along passively, conducting business as usual, taking no dramatic action to change course in the hope and expectation that something will happen. Like people on a riverboat, we have long known there's a waterfall ahead, but assume we will somehow find our way to shore before we go over the edge. But now, the actions required to get us to shore are looking harder and harder, if not downright impossible. This is a bit of what you're saying. The sleepwalking, the notion somehow that eventually these encumbrances, these legal encumbrances that affect Trump, the fact that he doesn't have any institutional money, the Koch brothers backing Nikki Haley, et cetera, somehow these will weigh him down and his candidacy won't be viable. This goes on to say, no, it's a done deal. He will be the candidate.
Everybody thinks it's somebody else's job to make sure that this works out okay for democracy. And it's a little bit like when you pull over and you've got your partner in the car and you ask for directions, in the olden days before we had our phones strapped to the windscreen. Excuse me, could you tell me the way? Oh, sure. You go left, right, left at the end. And then you drive on and you go, well, they go, well, I thought you were listening. Well, I thought you were listening. That's what's happening with America right now. We are relying on the person sitting adjacent to us to be listening and doing something about it. And no one is doing that. And here's the crux of this, Mark. The MAGA Republicans don't want democracy. They don't care for it. They don't really know what it is. And consequently, it's a pointless conversation. It's become a kind of oxymoronic conversation because they don't care for democracy and they will argue with you. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. They care nothing for democracy. They think the word sounds a bit like Democrat and therefore it must be exclusive to Democrats, so they don't want any part of it. And so do the media. The media want the dictatorship because their viewing figures will go through the roof. And so military parades and King Trump and all this stuff, it's box office. So this is the dystopia.
I hear you, and in a way that argument lands, but let me push back with you a little bit on what the media wants.
Sure.
I agree. The media is MIA. The media is not pushing back in any sort of substantial way when it comes to these conversations around this. But the media has a lot to lose also, Anthony Davis, with a Trump dictatorship. And I'll continue. It really will be a dictatorship. And I'm talking about, and it's a creeping kind of dictatorship. I think Americans think of old black and white footage of soldiers walking through the streets. That's not the kind of authoritarianism that would take over. It would be a complete capture of the courts. So Trump could literally go after an MSNBC or a CNN, et cetera. So the media has a lot to lose in that way, Anthony. I don't know that the media wants a dictatorship. I get that we want Trump in the media because it's good for clicks and it's good for eyeballs and it's good for business. But a dictatorship, just like media wants a horse race in the elections, right? They always try to talk about Nikki Haley, et cetera, because a horse race is good. But they stand a lot to lose a lot, don't you think?
I agree, they do, but they also have wealth. And, in America, if you are wealthy, you can fight it. You can pay for your lawyers. You can pay your way out of a situation, which is the way Donald Trump has operated his whole life. And so they feel ring-fenced. It's average people who don't have the money. It's marginalized people. It's minority groups. I mean, look at the Voting Rights Act that got adjusted again last week, where suddenly individuals are not able to sue for their rights. I mean, this is now, it's so serious, and yet people are carrying on like it's just another election, and it really isn't. This one is way more important than the last one, and the Democrats made a mistake in not replacing their candidate. They saw Joe Biden do it once, and he did a great job, and to all intents and purposes, he has been a monumental president. CHIPS Act, the infrastructure bill, the student loan forgiveness, insulin capping, bipartisan work that couldn't have been done by any other president. Some real good stuff. Inflation is coming down. You know, I got some of the best Black Friday deals ever. You know, it is becoming more affordable, but people are frustrated because they don't have the time to analyze it, and they'd rather have Trump than Biden because Biden stutters. I mean, this whole election could come down to Joe Biden's stutter. That's what's so tragic about this.
I mean,
you know, we're so
Americans
physical.
don't vote. Yeah, America, exactly. We're superficial. I mean, it truly is that. Look at how Fox News would go days about whether somebody was wearing one of those American flag pins, or whether Obama was wearing the wrong colored suit. I mean, we are superficial by nature, but yeah, people vote with their gut. And you're right. It's ridiculous, but it's because Biden speaks in that soft-spoken, stuttery way and both these guys, and I was going to do this tomorrow, there's chapter and verse on Trump having lost a lot of steps. He's not all there either. So, but he's, at least Biden, I'd suggest, is surrounded by competent people. The people
and
around
young
Trump.
people and diverse people and people who are energized. You know, the cabinet is the youngest, most diverse ever. We should be talking about that. Biden should be offering these people up more. You know, there should be more press conferences. I fear that Biden, is resting on his laurels because he trusts that the American people care enough about their democracy. And he might be right. And I do have faith in the American people. Look, Donald Trump hasn't won anything since 2016. And he only won in 2016 because the election had help, right? We had Russia, the Kremlin, Cambridge Analytica, all of this ancillary support, aside from the fact that a lot of people back then didn't realize that Trump was the fascist that he turned out to be. I mean, those of us who write and read about it, we knew, but a lot of people didn't know. And they know this time. They now know what he is capable of. And I don't think that independent voters or Republicans who call themselves social liberal but fiscal conservatives, I don't think those people will vote for a second Trump presidency.
Interesting. Ancillary, as he says, or ancillary, I will ding. It's a ding word. Trump not contained, this article goes on, by the courts or the rule of law. By the way, Anthony Davis, just in reference to the courts, I'm against televising the Trump trial. We've had other senior correspondents on from major networks who said, no, we want the Americans need to see it, the transparency, et cetera. Trump will grandstand. Trump will use the cameras. It is a bad thing to televise. I mean, first of all, it's not permitted in federal court, but also it's just something that Trump will seize and use. The whole thing will be like a stump speech. Don't you agree?
I do. I mean, weirdly, I don't really have an opinion on it. I think you should do whatever the law says. And if the law says federal court, no cameras, then it should be no cameras. Ultimately, Donald Trump is going to come out at the end of every day, as he did in the last few weeks, and shout across an echoey hallway so you can barely hear him and rewrite history, which is what he's done. He was coming out. This is with the current case going on with Letitia James. And he's basically coming out and going, yep, we had a great day. We had a great day. And it's like, what are you talking about? You already lost. They already ruled that case. He is a con man and a grifter, and he will just continue to the bitter end. And then if anybody thinks that he will temper or he will some way, kind of change, no. He is fighting this all the way to a prison cell. And, he could even be in prison and win the election. So I am scared because I'm an immigrant, I'm an immigrant. He may go after those. Absolutely.
Those of you who got here,
Absolutely. Even the legal immigrants they're talking about, doing something with, especially those of us who criticize him in a public forum.
Trump's power comes from his following, not from the institutions of American government, this goes on. And his devoted voters love him precisely because he does cross the line and ignore the old boundaries. They feel empowered by it, and that in turn empowers him. Even before the trials begin, he is toying with the judges, forcing them to try to muzzle him, defying their orders. He's a bit like King Kong testing the chains on his arms, sensing that he can break free whenever he chooses. And just wait until the votes start pouring in, he goes on. Will the judges throw a presumptive Republican nominee in jail for contempt of court? Once it becomes clear they will not, then the power balance within the courtroom and in the country at large will shift again to Trump.
Yeah, all true. All true. The thing is, the stuff that civilized people think is bad about Trump is the stuff that MAGA Republicans love about him. So when he's criticizing people, when he's criticizing the judge or the judge's clerk, when he's tearing people apart. I mean, what did he call Liz Cheney today? I mean, came out with some terrible stuff criticizing Robert De Niro for that speech the other day, called him a midget maggot or something. I mean, people love that about him because they love that he's breaking with convention and with social protocols. And so he knows that, and therefore it becomes like a drug. He's feeding their habit as well as his own.
Another traditional check on a president is the federal bureaucracy, that vast apparatus of career government officials who execute the laws and carry on the operations of government under every president. They're generally in the business of limiting any president's options. But as we know, Trump and his hench people will dismantle those safeguards. And when it comes to any constraint on Donald Trump, once he ascends into the presidency, they all begin to melt away, don't they?
Yeah. Well, he's worked out that the people that he employed last time, the Rex Tillersons, the John Kellys, the
Mark
ex-military, Mark Milley, the ex-military people especially, because they understand what's important. And they obviously have an allegiance to the flag and to the country rather than to a solitary man. But he's now worked out that those kind of people are not going to work for him. So the kind of people he's going to bring in will be the Steve Bannons and the Roger Stones and these characters who, where they aren't the full ticket, where they only care about Trump and they care about this movement. And like I say, read Project 2025. It's already been published. It's
right.
900 pages of a manifesto for a Christian, fanatic, far-right Christian nationalist movement taking over the government. And it's not about moderate Christianity. I'm not criticizing Christians. I'm talking about people like Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, who wants to control women and who hates the LGBTQ plus community and believes in gay conversion therapy and everything else. It is not normal. And that is what they want for America. And the rest of the world moved on about 50 years ago, and the U.S. will be left behind.
And Trump himself is all about persecuting his enemies, real and perceived enemies, about revenge.
Retribution.
Yeah.
He's going to go for it because he can, and pardoning himself is his other thing. I mean, arguably, he only wants to be the president so he can get out of jail, and he will do that. He will use every loophole and trick in the book. And this is why my colleagues, many of them are lawyers, they all trust that the legal system will hold and Trump won't even get as far as the ballot. And I'm like, you are kidding me, aren't you? He is going all the way. Plus, and this is something that's important, even if he doesn't stand a chance of winning, I want to work for the next year on the assumption that he does, because complacency we will regret. And you could say that with Hillary Clinton, I'm not even a Democrat. I'm a pro-democracy person. I grew up as a conservative. My parents were conservatives, but I believe vehemently in pro-democracy. And how easy it is to lose it. It is just a concept. It is just an idea. It just relies on everybody joining in. That's what democracy is. And America, I could read and write books on American exceptionalism. I fear that the exceptionalism of some Americans is the reason why it could lose its democracy. Because it's like, it can't happen to us. We're
right.
America.
Yes, the implicit notion of American exceptionalism is exactly right.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. We want to see more of you. I'll talk to you off the air about you being a regular visitor. We love your takes, and I'd love to exploit you regularly. And
Others
you are.
have.
I'll remind everyone, you can find Anthony Davis on the MeidasTouch Network, and also the 5-Minute Newscast, which is a daily offering. and his weekend show, The Weekend Show. So there it is. He's the creator of 5 Minute News and the MeidasTouch host across their network. And my favorite Britisher, let's not forget that. Anthony, thank you. Happy holidays, and we'll see you again, I hope, though, before the new year.
You too, Mark. Happy holidays. Play the national anthem again.
Yes, how about everybody? Everybody on your feet. How dare you? Americans, too. Up, everybody up. Wow. Yeah. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.